Good evening, Littleton, and welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, January 11th, 2021. We will begin tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United
States of
America,
and to the republic for which it
stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Regarding a retreat of the Select Board, and that will be followed at 7:55 with an update from our town administrator and our assistant town administrator with respect to 4 items: an intermunicipal agreement, a vote to approve an agreement for regional CDBG grant, the Littleton Station 40R project. We're going to receive an update on that project and vote on the MAPC technical assistance proposal. That will be followed by Mass Municipal Association annual meeting. We have official delegate designation form for appointment of Mr. Ansaldi, and that will be followed by an approval of the 2021 Alcohol Beverage Control Commission ABCC 2021 license renewal certification form. That will be followed at 7:55 by a review of the Select Board meeting minutes, and then we will be adjourning our meeting for the evening. So if you could, Mr. Ansaldi, start us off with a reading of the mail.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Number of things in the packet today. First being from the Minuteman Senior Services. They presented their year-end review, and they supplied services to 769 Littleton residents. So that was quite informative. I'm sure you found it the same way. Then we have some correspondence from Xfinity, just with some channel changes. And then there's a courtesy fee adjustment that's going to be coming to those that have Xfinity, I guess for sports programming that didn't happen during the pandemic. So I'm sure it's a slight fee adjustment. Certainly not enough to plan a vacation. The third thing is the Mass Municipal Suffolk University. I talked about that last time. I'm going to skip that. We did receive the official notification from ANF on the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund that it was extended through December 31st, 2021. We talked about that last time. This was just a form that said, yes, it's extended. Miaras in Harrington made a donation at the end of the year with not being able to do much. They made a donation to Loaves and Fishes on behalf of the town. So I thought that was very nice. And the last thing, we have a thank you from Archer Mobile for the board waiving the alcohol and common vic fees. And that'll be it for the mail, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So the next item on the agenda is we have department and board updates and requests.
First up is Alicia, if she on, Joe, or?
Yes, she is.
Okay, great. If we can just let see Alicia. There you are.
Are you there, Alicia?
You're on mute.
There we go.
There you
Hello.
go.
How's everybody doing?
Good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's great to see everybody. I just wanted to pretty much just thank the Light and Water Commission for the, the donation of $1,000 to the Holiday Helpers Fund. It would be a huge support program and for us continuing it in the future. If you guys have any questions, I just wanted to come in and be here in person just to, make sure that I thank them and thank you. Because that program is so helpful to our community, and we hope that we're able to do it for years to come.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate you being here, Alicia. And I wanted to mention that program and how important it really is for our community. I was thinking about it this Christmas morning, all the families that woke up with something special under the tree, due in large part to the efforts of the Park and Recreation, that program that you put together and has been so successful and growing every year. So I wanted to thank you on behalf of the board for continuing with that effort. And it really does make a big difference. It makes Littleton, special for many reasons, and that's one of them. So thank you so much for that.
No problem. Glad to do it. It's great.
And thank you, the Littleton Electric Light Department as well for supporting that program. It's great.
Ready for a motion, Madam Chair?
I am.
Okay. Move that the Select Board vote in accordance with its policy on solicitation and acceptance of monetary and non-monetary gifts for public purpose to approve a donation to the Parks, Recreation, and Community Education from the Littleton Electric Light Water Department in the amount of $1,000 to PRCE's Holiday Helpers Gift Fund.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Knox? We lose Joe?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. Thank you. And we're on to item 2B, Mr. Ansaldi.
Yes, again, a donation to the Elder and Human Services, and Ashley Shaheen, as I see her, and she can just unmute herself. And
hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. So I'm here requesting acceptance of gifts, and like the Recreation Department, we had received a generous donation from the Light and Water Department on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, $3,000, which is going into the programs and outreach account. So some of the funding will be used for a grab and go winter survival bag program scheduled late January, and the remainder of the funds for emergency situations for residents. We also had received $1,000 from an anonymous donor, which is also going into the programs and outreach gift account. And then lastly, Ed Sweeney's donated his monthly tips for November and December in the total amount of $2,436 for residents in need. And I believe Ed is actually on the line this evening. So thank you, Ed, for all that you do in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you. We're happy to do it, and I appreciate the recognition. But what I'd like you to understand is that I'm owning the vehicle. The members of the community are the people that donate on a daily basis, and they're the ones that have made it possible for us to donate to the school for as many years as we did, and for us to continue to donate to this program. So we will continue our donations for many years, I hope. And I thank you again. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ed. And as you stated, the Littleton community as well. So thank you very much.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
A lot of
Please.
tips.
Yes, a lot.
Before I make the motion, I just taking off what Ed just said. He may say he's only the vehicle, but without the vehicle, oftentimes you can't get anywhere. So it's important to have the vehicle.
Good point.
I'll move that the select board vote in accordance with its policy on solicitation and acceptance of monetary and non-monetary gifts for public purpose to approve donations to the Elder and Human Services from Ed's Weenies in the amount of $2,436, from an anonymous donor the amount of $1,000, in from the Littleton Electric Light and Water Department the amount of $3,000 to the EHS Programs and Outreach gift account.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. And now we're on to item 2C, Mr.
Thank
Ansaldi.
you.
Yes,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Ashley.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed. Yes.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. This item is, it was about a few months back, I believe it was, we went out and solicited the job for the Assistant Human Resources Administrator. And unfortunately, once the people that applied realized that the job was only for 30 hours and not 40 hours that they thought it was advertised for, nobody wanted the job. So at this point, what we'd like to do is amend the hours, and Cheryl's also on the call. We'd like to amend the hours to increase this to a 40 hours so we can attract a person that has some municipal experience, hopefully, that can help Bridget. And we'd like to do up to 40 hours, so that will give us that flexibility the next time that we have some negotiating power with people that would put in for this job. And Bridget's on, that she can go through more. So Bridget, if you want to take it away.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair and the board for listening. I appreciate the time tonight. And just as Anthony said, looking for a little bit more flexibility to, market the position a little bit better and attract the right folks with the correct background. You've seen in my memo that, really looking for the person to perform the duties of the job description, but then also really delving into capabilities in Munis that we haven't been able to do yet, to streamline the process for open enrollments, employee self-service, benefits updates, time management notifications, accrual requests. There's a lot of pieces of Munis that we're not utilizing appropriately yet, and I'd really like this position to be able to tackle that challenge. More auditing, frequently of our benefits and the different, medical, dental, etc., on a more frequent basis to make sure that we don't have any gaps. So really just overall being able to have that flexibility to increase the hours as needed as the department grows and the need becomes more.
Okay, great. Thank you for that summary, Bridget. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I'd like to jump in if I could, Madam Chair. I'm
Sure. Sure.
I'm not. I'm always looking for what else could this position potentially be used for, but Bridget addresses that in the memo that she sent to us when she talks about the potential for contingent cross-training and that kind of thing to support the finance department as well. And the other question I have, and she mentioned it as well, is the sharing of services in human resources, as well as in finance as well, between the school's business office and the town side. So I appreciate, Bridget, you wrapping both of those into this request.
Yeah. So I would like to, with this person, this new hire, have that increased flexibility to be able to offer the school more time for onboarding and whatnot, it would give us that flexibility to be more available to them as well.
That's great.
Great.
Collaboration.
Mhm.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments from other board members?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
I just wanted to say that I support this wholeheartedly, and I basically trust the department heads to allocate resources as they see fit. And so I'm sure that this is a wise use of personnel. And I want to make sure that we give these people the tools they need to succeed.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Any other questions or
motion?
comments?
Ready for
Oh, we
motion,
ready?
Madam Chair? Yep.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Move that the select board vote to amend the Assistant Human Resource Administrator position from 30 hours to be approved as being up to 40 hours.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Nordhaus,
yes.
Mr. DeCoste,
Of course, is yes.
Mr. Glavy,
Yes.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bridget.
Good luck,
Thank you all.
Bridget.
Thanks, Bridget.
So next agenda item is public input and members updates. Do we have any hands raised for public input?
Currently, Madam Chair, we don't.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to members updates. Mr. Nordhaus, do you have anything to share this evening?
I do. I was actually talking to Ashley earlier today, and she mentioned the emergency rental assistance program. I thought I would mention it again. Run by Elder and Human Services and the Affordable Housing Trust. You can get help with your rent if you can't make the rent or if you're in arrears because of COVID. And I just want to make sure that anybody watching tonight, if you need help or you know someone who does, to reach out to Elder and Human Services. You can find all the information on the town website. On my role on the Housing Authority, that there's been some problems with residents who either tested positive for COVID or were in close proximity and maybe positive, like not properly quarantining themselves. And they reached out to me and to the executive director, and there's not much that we can do apart from asking people to take care of business, but I just want to reiterate how serious it is. I think just about everybody there is a high risk, and I want to make sure that people stay safe. And then I met with Nancy, Glenn Cross, and Anthony to talk about the website updates, and we looked through a number of things. I think we all agree that one of the primary challenges is that although there's a lot of things you can do on the website, a lot of people don't know where to find them or that they're even there. And I think the challenge will be to expose those things. So we're going to start with some small changes on the front page and see what we can do from there. And then finally, I attended the COA Vision Subcommittee meeting, and they're sort of leading the charge to help define how to get the senior center built and what form it'll take and what the seniors want. I understand we're going to hear back on the LLB architect's assessment of the Indian Hill building. I hope that clarifies our path forward. That's what I have.
All right, great. Thank you. Mr. DeCoste, do you have anything to share?
You're muted.
Mr. Nordhaus just jumped me on that. Anthony and I took Anthony over to walk Indian Hill this past week for just that reason, just because we do have the LLB report coming back and the feasibility of that as a senior center or as a town use. There was, I think it opened Anthony's eyes pretty widely. There's a great deal of space there, and we will have to make a determination as to whether or not that is the right location for a senior center. But it's the senior center as a whole, whether it's at Indian Hill or wherever it's going to be, is very much at the forefront. One of our top priority for us relative to our goals. And it was good for Anthony to be able to get out there and see the building, to be able to have a more valuable conversation with LLB.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you know what date the Indian Hill will be exiting that building?
Fall of 22, Anthony, is that what Deb said?
Yes, fall of 22.
Thank you.
But that there's no day, Joe. It's very much.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was just looking for the time span.
Yeah.
Whether it was still 3 years away.
Yeah. They're that's where they're shooting for.
Anything else, Mr. DeCoste?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Knox, do you have anything to share this evening?
Just quickly, that Matthew and I met today in very preliminary discussion with land use and building department and possible changes that might be made there. But this is a very preliminary. It was just our first meeting. Anthony was also, and Joe was also there. That's it.
Great, thank you. Mr. Glavy?
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that we all acknowledge the passing of a great servant of the town of Littleton and helped the town in a lot of ways over a lot of years in a very quiet but profound way. And that was Earl Banks, who was on the fire department for a long time. I believe he was a captain when he retired. A lot of folks know him from his decades-long involvement with the Boy Scouts as well. But on the fire department, I'll tell you, he and his wife Ellen started the Littleton Fire Explorer Post, which became a feeder network for so many career firefighters in Littleton and elsewhere who've gone on. We, for years, we just profited from being able to hire out of the ranks of kids who took an interest in that program. And, it's produced chiefs in towns. And Earl left us, a week or two back, and he should be remembered.
Great, thank you, Mr. Glavy. So I have a couple updates to share. I just wanted to acknowledge Mark Crory and thank him for working with me on the 2020 year in review video that has been shared on LCTV and YouTube. If you haven't seen it, please feel free to check it out. It was very well done by Mark, and I appreciate his collaboration and work with me on that project, as well as all the residents who contributed their photographs to be part of the video as well. I've been working with the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I just wanted to let the board know I put together a preliminary presentation of goals that we've actually achieved to date since beginning to implement the master plan, and it's more than we realized. So I'm looking forward to continuing working with them on that project and bringing it back to the board and the residents so that they can see exactly how far we've come since we approved the master plan a few years ago. And the other thing to piggyback off what Matthew said about the town website is I wanted to remind residents to sign up for e-alerts, especially now that we're heading into the budget season and we've got a lot of things coming up that might be relevant to town meeting in the spring. So it's now more than ever, residents really should stay in tune with the local boards, the select board, the finance committee, the planning board, and just, try to stay up to date on what's happening in town. And so you can sign up for an e-alert. It's right on the homepage of the town website, and you can have an agenda for the committee that you prefer emailed right to your email address, so you can just stay in tune and stay current with what's happening with the town government. So I just wanted to remind residents of that. And that is all that I have for member updates. And so now I think we have a joint meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Insaldi?
We do, Madam Chair. This is a joint meeting with the Finance Committee, and tonight our finance team will be discussing the preliminary FY22 proposed budget. I just want to thank Cheryl and Sean for all their work. I know that this is certainly continues on not being a normal year for us, but I think that in the different times we would have had this meeting earlier and had a different budget cycle, but bear with us during COVID, but I'll turn it over to Cheryl and Sean, who will take us through their presentation. I'll stop sharing, Cheryl, so you can share. Do you have that presentation, Cheryl? Or do you need me to put it up? You're muted.
have it. I'm all set. Thank you, though. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Madam Chair and Select Board and Finance Committee. As Anthony said, this has been an interesting year. Last year was an interesting year. This year, I think, is going to be another kind of a different year for us with the budget. But, you know, I do want to, before I get into the actual presentation, I want to thank all the department heads. You know, we put out the budget instructions based off of, you know, our meeting that we had jointly, and people really took that to heart. And so, you know, I just want to thank all of them for all their hard work as well, too. So I'm going to kick it off, and then I'll, you know, turn it over at a certain point to Sean. You know, certainly feel free to interrupt me with any questions as we go through this presentation. So as I mentioned before, you know, this budget message will look very similar to what you saw in the memo that we had presented back in the fall. You know, we told all the department heads to level fund expenses and that we weren't building COLAs in. We knew that we had some budget pressures coming up with CBA negotiations, you know, as they talked about the space needs study, implementing that. And then, you know, COVID and the impact that that has on the budget. You know, thankfully, it looks like, you know, obviously we have our CARES funding's been extended, and hopefully we'll get some additional CARES funding now that there's been some changes at the federal level. But we do know that there'll be some slowdown in new growth, and it's still going to affect some of our economic conditions here in town, local receipts and such. And so, you know, the budget that we asked the department heads to put forth was very conservative. So as I kind of go through just the high level budget summary, the FY22 budget is in balance. I would really like to thank the schools for working with us and coming in with a modest increase of 2.8%. You know, they've really been great partners throughout this whole process, and I really want to thank them for their efforts. A number of budgets, as you look through the big budget book that was sent out to you, actually decreased overall. There were a few key areas that we focused on, like professional development and training. I know that's a big area that Anthony is supportive of, in ensuring that our staff has the training that they need. As mentioned earlier, there's some reorganization efforts that are ongoing in the finance office, which we'll talk about later tonight, but also in the building department as well. And as we mentioned, you know, the revenues that we're projecting are decreasing by a little over 1%. Again, that's the, you know, impact of the pandemic. And new growth as well has been affected based off the pandemic as well. Our free cash transfers are based off our financial policy. So 150,000 going into general stabilization, 250 into capital stabilization. And then the available funds that we have for capital are 1.6 million. Again, that's based off our financial policies. And our total requests are 2.7 million. Any questions on this before I kind of move along? So as far as actual budget requests, we did have a few that are detailed out here. About 131,000 in personnel requests, one of them being for the building department reorganization. I do have the conservation did put in a request, and that is on this chart. What I will say is that's not built into the current budget today because that is part of the building department reorganization. But I did want to reflect it here just so you were aware of that request.
And if I may, Cheryl, if I may interrupt, the building facilities, the 50,000 is not the true dollar amount for what will be the reorganization. We met today. We have some more work to obviously do there. And we will be presenting probably the first phase of what that might look like at the next board meeting.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, that was just the number that we put in as an estimate so that we had something in here to work with as we kind of continued to work through that reorganization. HR, as was mentioned today, this is not, moving the admin from 30 to 40 hours, which you've already supported. There's some requests for the town administrator to elevate their administrative position. And then as far as expense requests, the assessing department's looking to expand their services provided by Patriot to include some commercial valuation services. And then the HR budget is looking to restore the cut that we made in FY21 to professional development. And then we are also, we have a finance committee reserve that's going from 311 to 250. And so what we're actually asking is to create a personnel reserve in the HR budget. A lot of towns have this. They call it end of employment costs, or they have a line specifically in the HR budget. And that's really meant to fund end of employment costs. So when someone leaves, vacation buybacks, things like that. If someone's retiring, historically, that's always been built into the departmental operating budget. But we do have people that leave unexpectedly.
Right. It's really the unforeseen items or departures that we're in a better situation to address if they become, if they do happen.
Right. And I mean, we always fund it within budget. It's just sometimes it's a matter of where we're kind of pulling the funds from. And so we thought, in speaking with Anthony, we both thought it was a good idea to kind of create this actual line in the budget and account so it was clear where we were funding this from going forward.
That's very modest. Is that going to be enough?
So the total budget's 75,000. The 14,000 is the budget impact because the finance committee reserve in FY21 was 311,000. It's now going down to 250. So the net budget impact is only 14,000, but the actual line item 75.
Okay.
And then there were a few budget requests actually.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What would the FinCom reserve be used for? Like, I know you're reducing it, but like, what's the impact of that?
So finance committee reserve is basically meant for unforeseen, unexpected costs. So, I don't know, town hall gets a huge hole in the roof suddenly, and we have
I'll give you an example.
The sewer backs up, something like that.
Yeah, I'll give you an example, Matthew. In my last place of employment, we had an ambulance that ended up being totaled, and they ran a BLS service, so they needed to replace an ambulance.
Okay.
So went to the reserve fund because that was the pool of money in order to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions before I move on? Okay. So we did receive a couple other requests that don't have any impact on the general fund, but I did want to make both boards aware. Park and Rec has some requests for additional staffing. Again, that would be funded through the Park and Rec budget, as well as LCTV is requesting to increase an individual as well. Again, that's funded through their budget and does not have a general fund impact. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sean, and he's going to take it from here.
Before Sean jumps in, Madam Chair, if I could just jump in real quickly.
Sure.
If we have any questions about specific line items for specific departments, we want to wait until we have the budget meeting with the specific departments.
Well, if you
Rather
had
than
some,
putting Cheryl or Sean on the spot
if it
for,
was something that we just ran through, Chuck, we could address it now, because at the end, I think that we may be recommending, instead of the 3 meetings that we have scheduled, because we're in a balanced budget, because this is a level funded budget, that we're going to throw an option to the boards that we could eliminate 2 meetings and just go to 1 with those departments that are affected with that request.
I'll just jump in, Anthony, rather than speculate. Just did that last line item on the Park and Rec for an additional 20 grand for an admin to sit at the front desk that's not getting any traffic right now. I'd rather address that at a time when the traffic is there and
So to that point, Chuck, when I spoke with Alicia about that, those are two positions that they would not even look to bring on until they were back to normal operations. So
yeah, I saw that in the description of the big book. But I think that, I mean, we don't know what the new normal is going to be. So for us to say that we might have an administrative system that has everything being registered online, or there might be something different. So for us to make a $20,000 budget decision today for speculation, I tend to. I see the justification with Bridget's ask because there's a need right now, and the impact would be realized immediately. I have a tough time with putting forth a $20,000 ask, which goes from a 25-hour to a 40-hour position, benefits eligible, pension impact. So I have some reservations about that particular line item.
I think this is Gary. I think PRC, they're going to be with us anyway, even if we go to the one meeting next week, because this is an increased request. So they're going to be there. We can ask Alicia a little bit more about it then.
Yeah,
talk to her. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I started the conversation with: do we want to do those questions now, or do we want to? But Alicia, if you're listening, be prepared. That's the reality of it, right? It is what it is.
Okay, thank you. We ready for Sean?
Sean?
Yep. All right, well, not too much more. Just $56.8 million to go over, but I'll try to kind of cover it at sort of a high level here. So from FY21, we're going to see a decrease on both the revenue and expense side of about close to around 1.2%. So that's around 650 to 700,000 for the revenue and expense budgets. One of the things that we've noticed since COVID is the projections of reduced local receipts, and also anticipating less free cash to support the budget. So as you can see on the graph on the left, there's the revenues with the property tax making up 79% compared to in years past when that was closer to around 75%. So that's really carrying the weight there. Other than that, there's not too many other major changes there. On the expense side, this is relatively proportional to what we've experienced in the past, with the town operating budget making up 22%, school budget 40%, employee benefits 18%, and debt service 6%, with some of the other charges like state aid, overlay, and stabilization funding rounding out the budget.
I had a question, Gary.
Sure.
I don't know if there's a way we can take that pie chart in going forward in maybe the employee benefit side. I'm assuming that is also the school's employee benefits. It's not integrated into the orange. Is that correct? So that how much of that employee benefit is actual school budget? It's our budget, but is going to the school budget expense, I guess. Is that easy to break up? If it isn't, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I was just curious what percentage of that employee benefit budget is school budget.
Yeah, so just to give you like a little background on how we do benefit budgeting. So since we just pay the one bill, we don't flex it out between town and school. We treat it as a shared expense. However, I mean, I think You can see the employees with the plans by where they work, and you could get the exact numbers or close to it, an estimate if you wanted to on that. So it's something I've done in the past, but for this model, just to cut down on some of the slices of pie, I kept it all together. So.
No, thank you. I just didn't know if it was part of the orange or not. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other questions? On this slide, okay.
The next item's our financial forecast. I think this is a pretty good tool that we use to look ahead and kind of model some of our kind of planning and priorities off of. I think when you first look at it on any sort of financial table, you look bottom up and you see, okay, 21, 22 look good and balanced, but then 23 onward is showing that potential deficit. So that's really based on some of our assumptions that went into the forecast. All of those are detailed in the big book, but essentially revenues are going up by around 1.8% annually, with expenses going up a little over 2% annually. So in looking at this, the operating budgets, that blue bar, so that includes town, school, debt service, employee benefits, all pooled together, the cash capital piece, and then other, which is a combination of state aid and state and county assessments, as well as overlay. So it's not really a reason to panic, but it's a good planning tool that we'll use and kind of refine as we get truer numbers throughout the year too.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this slide from anybody?
So this is kind of what Cheryl and I jokingly call the capital diet slide. It's one of those ones that shows what our total capital spend has been, broken out by cash capital in that teal, and then the total contributions to capital stabilization. So you'll see in sort of the past recent years, we've had significant capital expenditures, whereas going forward, that's really leaning out, but that's mostly based on an anticipated reduction in free cash with leaner budgets going forward. So all of those funding scenarios are based in the financial policy allocation calculations. So modeling forward, that's kind of our look right now for that. So.
Okay. Are there any questions on this slide?
Sorry, I'm going a little capital heavy here, but this one also shows that our departmental requests are in blue, and what we can fund in cash capital is in green. So if you look at 22, we got $2.6 million in requests, and we're able to fund 1.6. For some of the requests we can't fund at the moment, we're pushing those back on the cap plan.
Okay. Any questions on this slide from anybody?
This shows our historical free cash balances in use. The red is the amount of free cash spent in a particular fiscal year, with the green being the balance at that year's end. So similar to the capital planning ones, the free cash, the anticipated reduction in free cash kind of flows forward as we get tighter and tighter budgets.
Okay.
And I know we've kind of gone over this one a little bit with the even the tax rate setting process, but just want to circle back to it because I think it's pretty important in terms of the new growth analysis. We've been fortunate to have great new growth numbers in recent years. Going forward, that $450,000 mark is based on where we feel somewhat confident that we can get $450,000 worth of tax, new growth to add to the levy from mostly the residential market. I think with the uncertainty surrounding commercial growth and with the COVID impact, I think that's a safe but conservative place to be as we look forward with a gradual recovery in the out years.
Okay.
Sean, you couched that in, I think, proper terms, that it's conservative, because anything you can see or know about in the residential construction climate in Littleton right now and the valuation associated with that would suggest higher numbers than 3 flat years of $450,000 worth of growth. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that I wouldn't be surprised if we came in, north of that. I just don't, for modeling purposes, I just don't want to roll the dice on.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting you change it. I'm just saying, because we've done well historically by being conservative on the growth projections, but reality suggests something otherwise.
I'm with you.
Hope you're right.
I hope I'm right.
I hope Paul's right. I don't want to be right.
I'm talking to Paul.
All disclosure, I got an interest in this.
Any other questions or comments on this slide? Okay.
All right, so, as we kind of wrap up and think about what we have coming down the pike, just as, Sean talked about capital, again, this is really just so we keep this in our mind for a planning tool purposes, potentially the sewer project, any potential school renovations or future needs for schools. It's just something we'll want to keep in the back of our mind to make sure that we're creating that financial plan, which the town has always done really well at doing. But again, just a reminder there. And then one thing which I talked about last year as well is with each new building, it's not just the actual building cost itself. We have a number of operating costs that end up impacting the general fund budget. Increases to insurance, utilities, maintenance, IT services, support services, et cetera. So it's just something to keep in mind as we think about the capital needs of the town.
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. Do we have any idea if any of these capital costs have been projected for the new library building?
I know that the IT costs definitely have been built in. I built in some costs on the liability insurance line. Again, it's a bit of a guesstimate as far as how much that's going to increase, but I definitely did build some buffer in there for that. General maintenance, I don't think that that's really been something, or utilities, I don't think that that's something that's been factored in at this point. And then certainly not on the, kind of custodial services that they might need.
Right.
I think Mark Rambacher volunteered to do all general maintenance and all custodial. I heard that in a meeting somewhere. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Just kidding, Mark.
So it might be a good idea to start taking a look at those now. since the project's coming along, maybe just to give us a better picture going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm curious.
definitely.
I'm curious if the senior center has come up as a near future capital project.
I had the same question, Matthew. It's not on possible other projects. Although we have earmarked some monies, it's going to be in excess of what we've earmarked.
It's not on the capital plan, but we certainly do have some money set aside for it, and certainly can be a discussion once we have a better sense of dollar numbers. Absolutely.
Yep. Once we
Makes
determine
sense.
what direction we're going to go in,
Mhm.
certainly.
I was interpreting the earlier reference to the Space Needs Committee in there, that was, while it wasn't explicitly stated, that was kind of what covered it. But
Yeah, I would just say it's on my radar and it's on our radar, right? You know, it's not specific. There's no dollar number actually built into the capital plan that you have in your budget book for it, just because it's a bit unknown. But it's, you know, certainly on our minds and something that we're preparing for.
Right. The next ask with the project for a senior center would be to request to transfer money out of that senior center stabilization to a senior center construction. So if we were going out for design, we have that source of money to do that.
Right.
So just to wrap up, you know, kind of next steps, I'm hoping, I've been going back and forth with the state. I'm hoping we can get free cash certified this week or next, which will, you know, finalize some of the numbers that we have available for capital. And then it's the boards making their recommendations on operating budget requests, capital recommendations, and overall funding of the budgets. And then I believe Anthony will probably talk about this a little bit, but currently we have tentatively 3 meetings scheduled for the budget meetings, but I know that that's a discussion point tonight.
Yeah, I'll put up the next, if you want to stop sharing your slides, I'll go back to mine.
All set?
All right, so as Cheryl indicated, these are the 3 meetings that we tentatively have scheduled. Now, based on what you just heard, and that this is a balanced budget, and you know it was a level funded budget. Really, the requests are what Cheryl identified in her presentation, and that being these departments right here, with assessing the TA, HR, building, so forth. So our thought was to recommend if both boards wanted to not do the 3, but really combine it into this one, which these are really the drivers of this budget, including their capital requests. Other than that, you'd be meeting with departments saying, hey, how's it going? We need more money. So, which just unfortunately, as Cheryl and Sean indicated, just with the pandemic, it's just not there right now. So this is an option if both boards choose to do that, is we just shoot for the 19th and roll everything into one night meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ansaldi. Mr. McCray, have you had any discussions or thoughts with the Finance Committee about this proposal?
I like not having a whole day of Zoom meetings. Believe me, I'm looking forward to that. I think that the proposal to do the 119 with just the departments that have an increase or are looking for extra support is a good one. I think that would probably do it for us. On the other hand, the Finance Committee, we don't have a lot of day-to-day correspondence or dealings with some of the departments. The only time we really get to talk with them is during this budget process. But I think under the circumstances, you know, we have our own individual FinCom meetings. And if there are some of the smaller departments that we would like to talk with, we could always have them in at that time. So from my perspective, not speaking for all my members, but from my perspective, I think the joint meeting on the 19th is probably the best option.
Okay, thank you.
Gary,
Yep.
Cheryl, or Nancy, you have any feelings about that? Or any other member?
I'll add that I think that you hit it right on the head, Alan. I think a few members expressed that meeting with each department head is something that we do look forward to, even though we do have liaison. We are all liaisons to different departments. We don't always get to, this year especially, we didn't really get to sit down like we normally would. But given the, like you said, given this situation we're in, sitting through 3 5-hour, 6-hour meetings of Zoom isn't really conducive to that anyway. So this is really going to get to the point of those departments that we would definitely have questions for as we work our way through the large budget capital expenditure, especially this year, and some of the needs going forward. But I would also say that I would like to have seen time on here for another department that might want to come in. I don't think we should stifle someone that would like to come in and talk about maybe future needs or something. That's all.
Yeah, this is Betsy Bowling. I agree with that. I agree with all those sentiments. With the caveat that any department that would want to come in and talk to FinCom, we would certainly be open and would welcome them to come in and talk to us, even if it's just to share what their department is doing and so on. Because like Alan said in the beginning, we don't really get that visibility. And I think sometimes this is their one shot to come in and talk to the town too, not just to us, but to the town on TV if they want to about what they're doing and so on.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from members of FinCom? All right, how about the select board? Do you have any thoughts on this?
I much
Madam
prefer
Chair?
this. Good.
Yeah.
I'm in favor.
I'm as much as I love this as the record will show, I love to dive into the budget stuff for a couple of reasons. Those that have been stated, this is, the proposed changes are not huge. They're reasonable. There's a couple of things still in play. That's fine. We'll deal with those as things play out. This is great. Zoom, it's been a godsend, but it's not the best forum, and many hours of that is painful. But then also, I don't want to miss an opportunity to note that the materials we've been presented, the presentations we've been given, the updates we've had all along are excellent. And we've had turnover in a lot of key positions. And yet I still feel very comfortable that we haven't missed a beat, and things are being run well. And the presentations that I've seen leave me with great confidence that we're in a pretty good position.
Great, thank you.
I'm also in favor of going to one meeting.
So am I.
I feel like I
as
should
well.
be the contrarian, but I agree with it as well.
Okay, great. All right, good. So I think we're all in agreement on having the meeting on the 19th, but to Mr. McCrae's point, maybe adding in just an extra slot. If there is a department that wants to just come in and talk to us and meet with us, certainly giving them that opportunity to do so.
Certainly.
Okay.
We want to take a motion to that effect. I have a slide up there that
Okay,
Handle that.
both can do.
Madam Chair, if you're ready for it.
please.
Okay. I'll move that the select board choose the alternate FY22 budget meeting scheduled meeting on January 19th, 2021, starting at 6 p.m.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Nordhaus,
Yes.
Mr. DeCoste,
Goes as I.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Knox, and Cindy Napoli is aye. So the motion is approved as written. We will have the meeting scheduled on the 19th, starting at 6 p.m.
The Finance Committee will need to vote on this also.
If you would like to.
The motion as presented to choose the alternate FY22 budget meeting scheduled meeting on January 19th, starting at 6 p.m. Roll call vote. Gary?
Yes.
Betsy?
Yes.
Who else do we have out there? I don't see them.
Tom Gregg.
I'm a yes.
Okay, Tom is yes.
Greg's out there.
yes.
Greg is yes. That it?
That's all you got.
That's good. We have a quorum. It's
All right, great.
motion is approved.
Excellent. Very good.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Chair, you ready for the next?
I am, please.
Sure, thank you. So we have tonight a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Personnel Board. The reason why we had requested to do all three boards, FinCom was already being here tonight, so we thought by adding the Personnel Board, it would save us some time for making this presentation 3 different times. So what we did is we really looked at the Finance Department, and we had a few goals in mind, or objectives. One thing that we found when Ann and Steve retired is that there was a lack of people that could step up and fill those roles. So it really wasn't cross-training going on. There wasn't succession planning. I know we've talked about it even when I was here the first time. And really what we had going on in our finance department was the individual groups, accounting, treasurers, assessing, collecting, kind of worked in their own silos. So there wasn't really much overlap. So when we looked at this, the finance department, and Cheryl did a great job, and she's going to walk us through the slides next. Our objective was to create at least 3 levels for every position so we could have a cross training. So we don't get into that situation where we need to hire, which we've done, hire consultants to come in. When the previous finance director left, we hired a consultant, and we've needed to do that recently too. So here's a presentation that Cheryl's going to walk us through that we think makes us a stronger finance department, one that becomes more efficient, one that becomes more sustainable operation, and we think better for the town of Littleton. So, Cheryl?
Thank you, Anthony. Like Anthony mentioned, I think that ultimately, coming in, we have a lot of great people. Everyone works very hard. But I think, through the transition and then also through COVID-19, it highlighted some areas that we want to focus going forward. And so ultimately, this reorganization is really just kind of shifting some roles and responsibilities around and kind of relooking at how the department is structured so we have those redundancies. So this first slide here is really how the finance department is set up today with the accounting group. Then we have treasurer's office, then we have the collector's office, and then we have the assessing office. Any questions on our current state of operations?
In the inequities that I was speaking to earlier, as you can see in the hours for each of those function. So Cheryl has 85 hours that's dedicated to the finance, to accounting, 174 to the treasurer collector, and then 110 to the assessing function.
So as we look at kind of the next few options, these are just some of the highlights of what we are looking to attempt to do. One of the things that a lot of communities utilize is what's called lockbox processing, and that's basically an outside service that you mail. When you mail your payment, it goes to a PO box. They pick up that PO box and they process, your real estate tax, your motor vehicle, etc. And one of the things as we went through this pandemic was our collector would have to be in every day to pick up the mail, open the mail, and process the payments to make sure that that revenue source was ever coming in. And that's a really critical function to the town. I mean, we absolutely need to make sure that that money is coming in, because otherwise we cannot continue with our operations. And so to have that resting on one individual's shoulders, especially during a pandemic, just really kind of made it clear to Auntie and I that we really need to look into lockbox processing, which most or a lot of communities do use. And so that's one of the big changes as we go through the different options. And as Anthony mentioned, it's, identifying those critical functions and then having multiple layers of backup through those functions. So, and then it's really bringing the option one and option two is bringing the treasurer and collector into one functional area, which again is pretty commonplace in most communities. Most communities don't have a separate collector and a separate treasurer. And then kind of reshifting some of the resources around a little bit. And so as you can see, when you look at the new organization, in the accounting department now, there's a shared resource between accounting and treasurer. We're calling it a financial analyst position, but that individual will support both functions. And what that does is not only does it provide professional growth for that individual and make their job just generally more interesting so they can see big picture, it also allows, if something happens to myself, they can step into my role. If something happens to the treasurer collector, they can step into that role. It gives us greater flexibility. And in this option, we're also currently, the accounting office has a 10-hour-a-week position. And so in all the models, it's eliminating that position and upping the assistant town accountant from 35 to 40 hours. Same thing in the treasurer function. It's taking that payroll individual and upping them from 35 to 40 hours. And again, as you can see, it's combining the treasurer collector into one function. And then in the assessing department, it's, this actually already happens kind of informally. The assessing department and the collector's office works hand in hand on a lot of different issues. And so this is somewhat just formalizing that kind of cross-functional area, but also, kind of continuing along with what we talked about before and having someone in the assessing office straddling to some degree the treasurer collector function as well too. And so then in option two, it's very similar to option one. The main difference is with lockbox processing, it's an a la carte service, so you can really pick and choose how you want to utilize it. And so in this option, it's relying more heavily on that process, as well as it's relying a little bit more heavily on the assessing office to be more involved in the collector's function. And it's moving, instead of having an assistant treasurer collector, it's having a collector clerk and moving even more of the collections onto the treasurer collector. But outside of that, it's effectively very similar to option one, as you can see in the diagram.
All right. Thanks, Cheryl. So we've had an opportunity to talk to the finance team and their staff and let them know about this reorganization, why we're proposing it, the benefits that we think will come from it. And I think Cheryl and I, if you were looking for us for a recommendation as to option one or option two, I think that we both agree that option one would be our choice at this point. Certainly that's not our call, it's your call, but just passing on what we on the front lines think makes the most sense. So if there's any questions of the board or boards.
Hey, this is Gary. Just as I look at this, could you go back to option one again, just so we could see it, since that's the main recommendation? So is there a concern, when I look at the treasurer, whenever I see a bunch of titles attached to a name, is there a concern that we're going to overwhelm a person, or how do we get that person trained up on all of these things, or is it fairly common? I don't want to, go out and not create a position that we really can't fill for that need. Is this something legitimately we can recruit or fill? That outside of that, long title or secondary responsibilities. You said you reached out to staff. Did staff have any input as far as you mentioned kind of the ground truth, but some of these people, did they have any ideas or did they have any input to this? Or was it mainly kind of done at your level?
Carol, do you want to attack it first? Where you've had more
Sure.
conversations with your group?
Sure. So, I mean, I would say, yes, that title is long, but I mean, typically if someone says I'm a treasurer, it's inherent they're a treasure collector. I mean, yes, it looks like a long title on paper, but they are 99% of the time treasure collectors. And a lot of the times, treasure collector, a lot of the collector function actually doesn't fall within them. They have oversight of it. So from my perspective, I don't think that that's a concern as far as getting someone either who can be trained up to do it or can do it. And I think, it says Assistant Director of Finance and Budget. And I think, again, from our perspective, that's really just signifying what this individual is actually doing. Again, I think a lot of treasurer collectors assist when there are directors of finance. They assist them. They just don't have it in their title. So we're just putting it all in a title, but I don't think that the actual duties of that function are anything outside of what other communities have.
Thanks.
And then as far as, discussions with the department and whatnot, we certainly had some preliminary discussions with some individuals, and then we met with everyone else. And, what I said to them, and anything I said to them as well is, while formulating this, people realize that it makes sense and understand the concept. The specifics of that are still something we really do need to work out with the department heads and with the individuals. And so this is a framework, and I think people understand the framework and the necessity for the framework overall. But that's a lot of the who's really going to do what and how and what those job descriptions are going to look like. Those are all discussions that we still need to have with everyone, because at the end of the day, we're all a team, and it's up to all of us to really figure it out together, because it needs to make sense for everyone.
I have a question. The financial analyst doesn't have a job description, so I'm not really sure how it could already have a grade. Go ahead.
Nope, and you're right, there's no job description there. And again, this is just for demonstrative purposes. And so all of these jobs will have new job descriptions, and the grades will have to come from the personnel board.
Okay, so doesn't that kind of skew the possibility of saving money? Or is that not the premise of this whole?
That was never really the objection, is to save money. That was lost on our minds. It was really to make a more efficient, sustainable operation for the future.
Okay, so the other question I do have is, as Gary mentioned, putting so many slashes and having a long title, a commoner, as myself, would look at that and go, okay, he's Assistant Director of Finance and Budget. If Cheryl happen to be out sick or happen to have to take a family leave, he now needs to step into that position, correct?
Either him or the financial analyst, depending on what we're looking for them to do, yes.
Well, yeah, and it depends what the question is. If the question is just the accounting function to step in, I think our goal was the financial analyst would. If I was looking for somebody to step up and to be overall the supervisor in Cheryl's absence, I'd be looking at Sean.
And so he can be a collector, he can be the treasurer, and do the assistant's job all at the same time?
Can we put the comments through the chair?
I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, if I can, Madam Chair.
Sure.
So I think that all the slashes are just for illustrative purposes. To Cheryl's point earlier, a treasurer collector, if any position that's really gets advertised as a assistant treasurer collector, they're also part of the financial team when working with any municipal budget. So the fact that we just put assistant department director of finance and budget, that's something that we did here in Littleton, but it's implied that anybody on the financial team is always part of the budget process. Kathy very much helps out with determining new growth with Sean. So it really is a team approach, and that they're doing it, all of these functions for the most part, they're doing some aspect of it. It just, again, really for the illustrative purposes. When we have job descriptions, you may just see, something different when we get done with it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions or comments from any members of the select board?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
I said this earlier tonight. I think that we should, trust Anthony and the department heads to run their departments. And I don't see a reason why we would not take their recommendation on this. I understand, I think prudence is good, and I think asking questions is good, but I don't see anything here that I'm qualified to shoot down. So this has my approval.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo what Matthew has said, and I didn't hit mute quickly enough to get in before he did. But no, I personally, and I think we as a board consistently support our department heads, and this is something that has gone through a lot of conversation and vetting, and above and beyond that, to Matthew's point, if those who are on the front lines are saying that this would be a more efficient, more productive way, if we happen to save some funds, that's great. That's an added benefit. But if it makes us more efficient and better able to serve the public, I think that's the best outcome we can look for.
Right.
Yeah, I'll echo mostly the same comments made, and also applaud the Anthony and Cheryl and the department heads for having the foresight to go ahead and suggest these changes without any prodding from the board. And the fact that it even projects to be a savings is terrific too, but just to make it more efficient and to allow the various departments under that umbrella to better aid each other, it's just good. If there are details that need to be worked out in the personnel process in terms of job descriptions and classifications, fine. Those are details we can work out, but in the bigger picture, it's a good move.
Right.
Well, Madam Chair, one more thing I forgot to mention. The last part of this reorganization is actually moving the finance team up to the 3rd floor and moving building and land use down to the 2nd floor. So our administrative team will all be together because we all work together now. So it'll just be easier for us to function being all on the same floor.
Right. Thank you for that, Mr. Insaldi. That's actually something that we have talked about in the past for a number of years. So it's nice to see that that's in motion. I didn't know if there was any other comments from the finance. from the finance committee on this slide or on this proposal.
I've seen this proposal. I like it. Particularly like it for the cross-training aspects of it,
right,
and also the succession planning parts of it. So something we've needed. It'll work. And as many of the selectmen said, this is what the team thinks they need. This is what they think is the most efficient way. I personally am happy with it. If any comments from any of the other members of the finance committee?
This is Betsy. I agree with all those things, and I definitely like it, and I especially like the fact that the initiative was taken to do it. It's a lot easier to just leave things as they are and kind of muddle along, so I really applaud those efforts.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think as well, I looked this, I had the titling question, but that was more of a technical question. I like the fact that this kind of builds potential to be able to hire within when people leave. We don't have to always go out because we have someone that might be trained. I think it's probably about 10 years overdue. I think we can use this almost as a template kind of go forward and look at some of the other departments maybe for if we're really talking efficiencies. And I know you've already been working on some of that. So no, it's an exciting time. And I think we can, if we've learned something over the last year, becoming more efficient is going to be very important. So thank you. Thank you guys for putting all this together.
Yeah. It's great for employee development. And
Yeah.
It's just great. It's good.
Any other comments, guys?
Madam Chair, this is Joe. We do have the Chair of the Personnel Board, Anita Harding, with a hand raised.
Okay, certainly.
Madam Chair, I would just like to ask one question. With the options going forward, will any existing employees lose their jobs based on this option? Or will any existing person lose their job description and therefore not have a place to go in this option?
Is it premature to make that determination?
Mr. Ansaldi, can you respond to that?
Yeah, sure. So I think that's why Cheryl and I are recommending option one. I think Cheryl vetted her staff. I think that with this plan, everybody in our existing staff falls into one of these positions. So no, I don't think that anybody's going to lose their positions unless somebody didn't want to go into one of these positions. Cheryl, would you agree with that? Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. Sorry. Yes, no, Anthony, I agree with you. That is one of the reasons why option one is the one that I'm recommending, in that, existing staff have available options should they choose to want them. So it's up to them and whether it's a position they want, but there are options for our existing staff.
All right, great. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, good. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Anthony, and everybody involved in working on this. This is really helpful, especially the format and the presentation, Cheryl, I found very useful and very helpful the way you brought this forward.
Digest, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you to Anthony, I just want to confirm that there's no motion at this time required. Is that correct?
I didn't include one, Paul, but if the select board's comfortable with allowing us to proceed, there's still a lot of work that we have to do with job descriptions and so forth.
Yeah.
I certainly welcome a motion to proceed with option one.
Okay, then just to formalize it, get it on the record, then I don't mind making a motion, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, that the board vote to endorse Finance Department reorg option one as presented by the town administrator and the finance director.
With some leeway to make amendments as deemed necessary.
Yep, what he said.
Yeah, second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste?
I'm in favor.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
And Cindy Napoli is yes. So the motion is approved as written. I don't know. Do we need a vote from Finance Committee or anybody else?
No, I don't think so.
Memorialized, yeah. I think we're good.
We've had our look at this and we've made our comments, but this is not something that we vote on.
Okay, excellent. All right, good. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All.
Thank you.
Thanks to the other boards too for being present.
All right, Madam Chair, the next item is our host community agreement. And here is Larry Beeks is supposed to be, Joe, is the group, Larry and the Amazon representative and Mark Martinari was going to join us?
Yes, I was in the process, and maybe Mark can help take the last group out, and I'll elevate the next group to come in.
Thank you.
Great.
So I would just ask if anyone from Northbridge or Beals Associates or planning, if there's anyone else that needs to be elevated, please raise your hand.
Mark. Larry, do you have your presentation that we can have you share? You can share that with us on the screen.
Yes, Anthony, I have a 5-slide PowerPoint.
Yes.
And I just clicked on share screen and it says you cannot start.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, Larry. My fault. I need to stop sharing mine. Try it now. All right. Or can we make, Joe, can we make Larry a co-host so we can share his screen?
Sure.
I think I can do it right now. And I'm hoping that perhaps you can see my screen.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Let me enlarge it. And so I don't want to butt in here, but I'm ready to go if you are.
Yeah, please.
Okay. My name is Larry Beals. I'm with Beals Associates. With me tonight are some representatives from Northbridge, Brian Orr and Greg Losey. And I believe we have 3 people from Amazon as well. Brad Griggs, Jessica Schumer, and Calvin Kaplan. And first and foremost, I was told I needed to be fairly brief here, that we had about 5 minutes to make this presentation. So I tried to boil down about 6 months worth of work into 5 slides. So,
well, Larry, we can give you more time if you want to throw some more money at us.
Okay, I've actually run out of money, but I could perhaps sing or dance a little bit.
We'll give it that.
Okay, good. So I want to orient you to the project. I want to give you some of the high points of what we were able to accomplish with both the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board. And as an overview, we went through a fairly rigorous planning process, and I think we came out of it with a better design than what we originally submitted to both the Commission and the Planning Board. So for orientation, this is a view of the building that was taken in the fall, as you can tell by the foliage. So this is the building that is currently under construction, and it was approved last year as a warehouse distribution, and it's now being retrofitted to accommodate Amazon. In the background, you see a building referred to as 153 Taylor Street, and that is the building that's being demolished to allow for parking so that this facility can function. Now, I just want to be able to walk you around the site a bit, and I'll grab a laser pointer. So I'll orient you. This is Route 495. And for reference, down in this corner where my laser pointer is, that's the north arrow. So generally, 495 is running north and south here. This is Taylor Street that I'm tracing, which provides the frontage to our site. And this is one of the ramps on and off from Route 2 southbound. What was previously approved is this building, parking around it, truck docks in this area. And then we just recently obtained approval of this parking area. This is not the final design, but it's the best rendering I had because you can see there's an existing building already in there. So that is the site plan. Significantly, these green colors, there are a lot of bordering vegetated wetlands. So most of this area is wet, and then the green also connotes buffer zones and protected areas. And as I said, I worked today to boil down some of the key information, and we grouped them into major points. So one of the significant things that we feel pretty good about is the donation of approximately 58 acres of land to the town of Littleton Water Commissioners. And in addition to the donation of that land, we worked to also develop a salt reduction plan and a groundwater quality testing program that will be done by the property owners. The design actually removes an acre of impervious surfaces. And as part of the host community agreement, we understand some of the funds will go towards replacing older sections of water main on Taylor Street and in the vicinity of the site. The second critical point that we went through was transportation. And Northbridge has engaged a local transportation management association that provides shuttle service to the nearby MBTA transit stop and surrounding communities. To supplement that, we have dedicated 30 commuter rail parking spaces on the site, and we're providing a shelter. And our understanding too is that some of the mitigation payment is targeted to Littleton complete streets to create better pedestrian and bicycle access in the area. It was also discussed during our hearings that public safety had concerns about communications. I don't know the specifics, but I understand the communication system needs to be improved with better equipment. So we're hoping that some of the host community agreement payments will be able to fund that as well. Traffic was a big discussion throughout many meetings, and we've developed a traffic management plan, and I'll show you some more specifics on this, but it deals with the vehicles entering and exiting the site. And one thing that's critical in this design that we agreed to implement with the planning board is that as you leave the site, as you're driving up that driveway towards Taylor Street, there's going to be a sign that says all traffic must turn left except for local deliveries. And the representation to the planning board was that this is a great location because it provides great access to the highway system, Route 495 and Route 2. There will be some vehicles that will need to take a right onto Taylor Street, but that's only for local deliveries. So if you live in Boxborough or if you live in Littleton and you order something from Amazon and if it comes through this facility, that van will exit the site, take a right, and make that local delivery. The cleanliness of the site is critical, and we have an operation and maintenance plan that's been approved by the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission that involves weekly parking lot sweeping and trash pickup to protect the wetlands and the groundwater resource areas located around the site. And then we have trash pickup and parking lot sweeping, as I said, is required to be performed weekly. And we actually designed a guide rail around the perimeter of the parking lot that has a chain link mesh screen on the back of it. And the purpose of that is if there is litter in the parking lot and it blows across the parking lot, it would be trapped by the screen so it could be picked up during the trash pickup sweeping of the parking lot. The building proposed at 151 has substantial bathroom facilities, but there was concern expressed about the remote nature of the parking lot on 153. So we've located a separate bathroom facility on the 153 parcel for the drivers that may arrive at that site. And then one final point that I'd like to make is that the building that currently exists on 153 was vacated, and there are a lot of furniture and furnishings and goods in that building that Northbridge is willing to make available to the town at no cost. And we just need to coordinate to go through the building, mark whatever the town wants, and then we can make it available for removal. Just to illustrate a couple of points, this is a slide that we presented to the planning board. And in the foreground of this picture, the foreground of this picture, this is our exit drive. So 495 is located on the upper part of the picture. This is a state facility across the street. This is the existing driveway. So as vans load up in this building and drive away from the site, we will have a sign that says left turn only except for local deliveries. The goal is to get all the traffic out to the interstate system as opposed to the local road system other than local traffic. And then the final thing is we presented this plan to the planning board for consideration by the water commissioners. But the purple boundary, this purple property line, is the perimeter of the property that we made the application for. It includes what was formerly known as 151 Taylor Street and 153. And what we've shown in blue is really what we need to comply with zoning and to function on the site. So that leaves behind 58 acres, 58.4 acres. And what's significant about these acres is that it's either a surface water or a groundwater contributor to the Beaverbrook Valley aquifer. So I know this is a critical water resource to the town, to the water commissioners, and we thought this would be a great opportunity because, you know, if you want to protect land, you should own it. And if the water commissioners own this land, then it will be protected in perpetuity. And I apologize if I was too quick, but I wanted to get everything in. And we can stay as long as you want to answer any questions or comments the board may have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Beals. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
You gonna go, Chuck, or?
Go ahead, Matthew. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, I appreciate the generosity. I mean, this is by all accounts, a great package. I think the land, the water protection is fantastic. I think the help with the communications and everything else that has been offered is great. I think my concern is, and I've been hearing from residents a great deal, is traffic. It's very simple, and people are extremely worried about the local streets being overrun. And I know that there have been discussions, and I know that the plan is in place for left turn only, except for local deliveries. And I think that that's likely to, if it's followed, I guess it's likely to solve the problem. My concern would be sort of what recourse the town has if this doesn't work out in the future. And in fact, there is a significant traffic problem associated, either with the left turn and with the current mitigation plan, or because drivers are ignoring it.
Okay.
So I assume that you're posing that as a question.
I suppose I am. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So I guess then you'd like me to respond to it?
Anyone can respond.
Okay. So there are some people here from Amazon that could respond to it. I'll start and they can interject as they see fit. We went through a fairly extensive analysis of the existing traffic patterns, the projected traffic patterns, and what we learned and what we conveyed to the board is that there is pretty good capacity in this area, because we're at the intersection of a state roadway and an interstate roadway. Where the capacity begins to break down is obviously in the morning during rush hour and in the evening at rush hour. And Amazon can amplify this, but their deliveries generally begin after the morning peak and then work throughout the day. And then there are some evening deliveries after the PM peak. So what I think we demonstrated to the planning board satisfaction is that we can integrate this traffic into this road system at non-peak hours when it has the capacity to handle the traffic coming out of the facility. And I shouldn't say this was just a peer review that a traffic study that we prepared. It was fully reviewed and vetted by the town's own consultant. And as of last week, we had satisfied all the questions, comments, and revisions requested by that peer review. So you've had two professional teams designing it, reviewing it, and I think we've addressed those concerns.
Madam Chairman, may I speak? I don't know if I have to raise my hand.
Is that Mr. Montanari?
Yes, it is.
Please go ahead.
In our planning board deliberation, in our discussions with Northbridge, we made a big deal about that no right-hand turn. And the reason that we put it in the host community agreement is because it's our intention, and hopefully the select board will act on this after the HCA is signed, to impose a $300 fine for the drivers that are caught taking that right-hand turn. In order to get that kind of fine, we had to put it in the HCA so that you can change your regs to allow Chief Bernard to enforce that, and the $300 would go to the town. And Larry has said that Northbridge is willing to put that fine right on the sign so that the people that are using this facility will know that it's only going to be for local traffic. And one other thing, when they did their analysis of 85% of the traffic going towards the highways, that amounted to like 17 Amazon trucks a day that would actually have to take that right-hand turn. So it's of the 300 trips that they're talking about, 17 of them would be right-hand turns.
And that's, Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Mark, I'm assuming that data is based upon deliveries that they've had that will, in fact, be routed from this final mile facility?
It is, and they also had a schedule. They showed how and when the trucks would be leaving, and it's in their report to the planning board. It's actually there, so Boxborough residents, and for that matter, Littleton residents, can go onto their plan and see how many trips would go down on a typical day would go down Foster Street, based on what their projected use of the facility would be.
Great.
Madam Chair, could I follow up with one other question?
Sure.
So the 153 parking lot is very large. It's more than 300 spots, but you're not going to park vans there. What is that going to be used for, and how often will vehicles enter and exit that, and how many trips will that account for?
Well,
Chair or Larry, if I may.
Brad Griggs is chiming in here, and he's the representative from Amazon that addresses that. So
Sure.
Brad, if you want, I can point to the screen if that's helpful, but why don't you take it over?
So Brad, if you could just identify yourself with what your role is at Amazon, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So yeah, my name is Brad Griggs. I'm a senior manager at Amazon's economic development team. I cover our Northeast and Mid-Atlantic with the members of my team. We lead Amazon's government relations, economic development, and expansion efforts, and we work closely with Chairman Montanari and the planning board on this process, along with our partners there at Northbridge and Larry Beals. Madam Chair and the members of the board here, the parking lot is large at 300 plus vehicles there in the upper left-hand corner. It is meant to be able to handle our peak season. This is something we went into quite a detail with the planning board to understand our operations. So these facilities, we try and build in the efficiencies to allow them to operate in a accordion-like fashion, where the bulk of the year, the parking lot will have Amazon vans parked in it. They'll be garaged there. They'll be paying excise taxes there, but not to the extent that would be needed during the peak season. That's around the holiday period, figure, at some point late November till early January, when our operations need to expand to accommodate the holiday period of our peak operations, when people are ordering more goods and more items from Amazon. And so we build in that efficiency in locations where we're able to accommodate that sort of operations, to allow the facility to expand like an accordion during that small period of time, and to have the efficiencies in place with a parking lot of this size for when that facility will operate at its highest levels. At which point then, after that period, the accordion contracts, that lot will be less utilized, and we will have our operations that will be steady state for the remainder of the year. So it allows us to not have to go and find offsite parking or utilize other locations to house our vans and then come to this site to operate during peak. But for the majority of the year, that will be additional parking, as you said, excess space in that area there on the lot. But we'll have the vans parked as we had worked with Chairman Montanari to identify and park those vans there, and the excise taxes will be generated there for Littleton.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Griggs. I certainly appreciate the time and effort that went into getting us to this point by all parties involved. I know that the planning board had multiple meetings and public hearings where site control, maintenance of the site, traffic volume, and patterns were vetted and discussed at great length. So I do appreciate, the work and effort that has gone into this up to this point to get us to this stage where we are, presently considering the HCA that is before us as a select board. But I just wanted to acknowledge the time, on behalf of the planning board, the town administrator, as well as your team as well, Northbridge Partners and at Amazon for, taking the time to really work with us and try to get this right and do what's best for our community as a whole, with having you come into our community with a, considerably large enterprise and something new for the residents of Littleton and the community. But really, I think a lot of time and effort has gone into it. So I just wanted to say thank you for that and for getting us to this point. I don't know if there's any other questions or comments from
Madam
the
Chair, I
board.
had,
Go ahead, Joe.
if I could, I have been able to follow this pretty closely. And I do want to thank the Northbridge and Amazon for their cooperation. I've been in the background, but listening to the whole thing. I really want to thank the planning board because a lot of the questions that have been asked tonight have been vented through the planning board. I think they did an outstanding job, and I think Mark should be commended too for his work and then taking the lead in this with the planning board. No project is perfect, but I think the amount of time that was put in and the thought that was put in to this project is probably the best solutions that they could come up with. So I just wanted to make that statement.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Knox.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If Paul doesn't have anything, Madam Chair, I'd like to jump in.
Sure.
Well, my only point, I'll let you clean up then,
Oh,
Chuck.
I said sure too soon.
No, I just want to echo those thanks to the planning board, Myron, Mark. Great job incorporating legitimate concerns from residents and from our neighbors in Boxborough, and the Selectman Knox, who was our board member who kind of trailed this most closely of all of us. But I feel very comfortable that what's been proposed is in the town's best interests and should be a workable plan for all involved.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Glady.
Thank you.
Mr. DeCoste?
Yes. So at the beginning, Larry did mention that there were 3 individuals, and Brad has spoken, and he has identified himself as the Senior Manager of Economic Development for the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. I just wanted to find out, I think there was somebody by the name of Jessica, and there was somebody else that's on the call. If we could just identify who those folks are, just for our own knowledge, that'd be great.
Sure. I believe they're currently attendees. They're not panelists, so I'll speak for them. Jessica Schumer is on my team. She is a manager leading our efforts in the Northeast alongside of myself. And then Calvin Champlin also is just an attendee. He's not a panelist right now. He's a senior project manager for our Amazon entitlements team here in the Commonwealth.
Entitlements team. Okay. Thank you for that, Brad. Appreciate it. One of the things that I'd be looking for in going forward with the host community agreement, I know that the question did come up during the planning board. I echo everything that everybody said. There's a couple of years ago, everybody was scratching each other's eyes out, saying we wanted Amazon to come to our town, and economic boom, and everybody wanted Amazon in town. And our job as the select board is to economic development that you're very well aware of, but also doing it in a way that's responsible and takes the public safety and like the the mitigating factors for the protection of the land. There's a lot of things that you guys very much are in tune with and are helping us to achieve, and that is very much appreciated. One of the concerns that I have in reaching out to a number of communities where Amazon does have a presence currently is to be able to have a point of contact at Amazon as well as at Northbridge. And Larry has assured us that all the contacts that he put forth during the planning board will be responsive. But being in the private sector myself, and many of the members are in the private sector, I'd feel a lot more comfortable signing this HCA knowing that we have a point of contact, whether it's a facilities person or some individual, that if we're not getting the kind of satisfaction that we've been promised from Northbridge, we have a point of contact, or at least a number with a position, because I'm sure there's a lot of movement with Amazon as there is with many businesses these days. But whether you have a colleague that would be responsible for this facility, or if you got somebody that's responsible for the Northeast, that would be a facilities, or I don't know what your positions, how you guys create the positions, but that point of contact to me is kind of a critical factor in moving forward with this host community agreement.
So, Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
So that point of contact would be myself. And to your point, Selectman DeCoste, with the expansion of our network, what we've come to realize is that was a issue with some of our legacy locations in areas like, say, Milford or Dedham, where we had facilities managers, and we utilized our process for some of the larger facilities, like our fulfillment locations, where management and leadership of those sites tends to be there years, not shorter terms. And they're responsible for being that point of contact within the communities where those larger scale facilities are at. As we're expanding our last mile network, these facilities are being launched in a relatively shorter time frame. So leadership of locations that understand how to operate these facilities effectively tend to potentially move more quickly than their counterparts at the larger facilities. So our team in economic development has stepped in, and we also have our counterparts on community operations, but we will be able to provide you and the board, as well as the planning board, with, they have my contact information. Larry can share it with you as well, to make sure that I'm going to be there. My team's going to be there. Our community operations team will be there to be able to get you whoever the point of contact is directly at the facility. So if that role changes, my team's still here. I'm still here in the Northeast. We're responsible for these facilities beyond just the launch of the site and maintaining good relationships. I think if you speak with, Selectman O'Laughlin in Milford, he would say the same thing, with the folks there in Dedham as well, where my team and I, as these facilities have launched and become larger components, meaning just the number of facilities have become a larger component of Amazon's portfolio, we're taking a more hands-on approach as being those lead points of contact.
And Chuck, one thing to add to that is that the planning board had the same concern. And I believe there's a requirement that we have to provide a current list of points of contact for Amazon. Northbridge is the owner, and they'll be around for a while. And I guess if all else fails, you give me a call. I did the original projects when these were digital sites. So I've been around for a while. Hopefully I'll be around for the next iteration.
You know where the bodies are buried.
You're right. Exactly.
And I'll save Larry the phone calls. This is Brian Orr from Northbridge. So we're representing ownership here. I've been on the project since we went through the original entitlements. So and when we acquired the building, probably around 1.5 years ago. So I'll be running point on the project. Marin has my cell phone, and we've been in contact with Mark, and same with Conservation Committee. So any issues during construction or once operations are up and running, from Northbridge side, you guys can always get in touch with me, and we'll be producing that list of contacts to be sharing with police, fire, and the various town officials and folks in an event there is an issue that arises.
Thank you for that, Brian. And with a name like Orr, I automatically want to trust you because, Orr, Bobby Orr.
Yeah.
No, but I really appreciate that. And that does assuage some of my concerns. And that is really one of the things that, Brad, you did your homework, and so you probably know where we've reached out and where we've seen some of the headaches, and where the headaches have been. So it's not really a secret. But I also, as I mentioned in the beginning, the 5 of us are responsible for doing that diligence and making those phone calls and visiting those sites and talking to those select boards and those town clerks and the folks that are fielding the calls in those communities. So we just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by our residents and getting the best corporate relationship that we can get. And hopefully these phone calls and conversations never have to happen. But I'd rather not have a bad taste in their mouth because we can't get a hold of somebody. I'd rather be able to say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. Let's address it.
Absolutely. That's the same from our standpoint as well. That's why our team is taking a more hands-on approach with these sort of community engagements. And we're excited about this facility. And like you said, we'll be here, if the phone needs to ring.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griggs. Thank you, Mr. DeCoste.
Madam
So,
Chair? Sorry.
Oh, certainly. Who is that? I'm sorry.
This is Chris Heap, Madam Chair.
Oh, hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Just a quick comment. I wanted to follow up on something Mark Montanari had said, just so everybody's clear on what's in the HCA. And Mark had mentioned that with respect to the $300 fine for making the right-hand turn onto Taylor, that was in the HCA, and that is actually not in the draft that you have in front of you. We could certainly add a provision discussing that fine, but I just wanted to note that it's not actually in there yet. What Northbridge, I believe, is committed to is to post a sign saying no right-hand turn and that there is a $300 fine. But if that's going to go into the HCA, that needs to actually be done before it's executed. And it would also require some additional thinking and some additional work on the town's part to determine how to effectively impose and collect that additional $300 fine, because that is not something that is currently in place, I don't believe, anywhere else in town.
Right, Madam Chair, I think that you were going to ask what the last thing that we had to do, and Chris just pretty much said it. The draft that you have does not include that, but that's something that we do have to determine the best way to handle enforcement of that. So once we determine that, if it's going to go in the HCA, then we would have the final version to you for the 25th, our meeting on the 25th to sign.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ansaldi, for that clarification. And thank you, Mr. Heap, as well, for pointing that out to us. So we don't need to take any further action this evening, clearly, Mr. Ansaldi.
Not at this point. We'll clear up the town council and the group in Northbridge, and we'll get back to the board.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I ask Mr. Montanari a question?
Is he still on the call? Certainly.
I am.
Will the draft permit or the decision that you made be available prior to the 25th?
Our draft decision is already done. If Maren can obviously send it over to you. I believe she's going to file it tomorrow.
I can just, that's fine. Thank you. I'll look at the website.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Subject to the HCA, obviously.
All right, great. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the board?
Just again, thank you to everybody involved.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Mr. Beals and Mr. Griggs and everybody else for your presentation this evening and for answering our questions. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to a successful partnership going forward.
That's great. Thank you for your time. And we too look forward to that successful partnership. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you.
And I will return my screen. Okay, Anthony, you should have your screen back at this point.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate it.
There's everybody.
Good. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, good.
Next item, Madam Chair.
So next on the agenda is a discussion about a select board retreat. This is something that we have discussed as a board over the past few weeks. I think we came to a consensus at one point to schedule this sooner rather than later, and I wanted to just bring it before the board this evening to see if we could choose a date and what sort of
settle on
structure
Key
we
West?
want wait 1 second, Chuck. What sort of structure we want the retreat to look like. So what were we going to say?
I just didn't know if we had settled on Key West because we can't go out of the country right now.
No, it was a toss-up between Key West and Vegas.
We met somewhere in the middle, and we're going to have a great.
I think, yeah, now we're down to like multi-purpose room or
Des Moines. I think it was Des Moines.
Beautiful this time of year, Matthew.
Rochester.
Hello, Rochester.
So I know, Chuck, you have some personal commitments coming up. I don't know, when those are, if we want to schedule this prior to then, or if we're looking into February at this point.
Yeah. So end of next week, like Tuesday. Well, we've already got a commitment on the 19th, right? So that's kind of like my hard stop. Anything beyond that for the next week or so are going to be a little challenging for me.
The 19th, Chuck?
Pardon?
Is that the 19th?
Yeah. So I'm from the 20th on. I'm in the unknown category right now.
If the board wants to do something on the 16th on a Saturday morning.
That's this Saturday.
That's this Saturday. If I'm just throwing it out as an option.
Yeah, I can do anything between now and the 19th, and after the 20th on, I'm kind of in a limbo state right now.
So Saturday the 16th, that would work for me. Mr. Glavy or Mr. Knox, Mr. Nordhaus?
Works for me.
I can make it work.
That's what time?
Morning?
I'd rather do it in the morning.
Agreed.
The afternoon, I could have an open house.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll schedule for Saturday the 16th in the morning. And do we want to, how do we want to meet in the multi-purpose room, or how do we want to handle that?
Multi-purpose room? Say, is 9 o'clock too late, or do you want to go earlier?
I may be coming from outside a little, so I'd appreciate not eating any earlier than 9, but whatever.
Okay. You can do 10.
No, I mean, 9 should work. I just wouldn't want it any earlier than that, given that factor.
I appreciate that, considering Joe and I have that long ride too, so.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you, Paul.
Does 9 work for everyone?
Yep.
Okay. All right,
How
great.
long? Just a question, only because when I end up being the only one with a potential issue because it's my daughter's 17th birthday.
Oh.
By the time we're done, she's not even going to be awake yet, Joe.
Well, there is that point exactly. No, just was curious as far as is it something we'd anticipate getting finishing up at noon, or I've not
2 hour hard stop. 9
2 hour hard stop. Yeah, I agree.
I have to leave by 11.
Yeah.
There we go.
Does that work for you, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. All right,
And Madam Chair, had we been, the last time we discussed this, I think we were leaning in the direction of making it a, obviously invite anybody's interpretation otherwise or other ideas, but just without a facilitator, kind of focused on the board's goals and, and implementation with the new administrative team and all that kind of stuff, right? Just kind of in-house, not the touchy-feely thing, just get right into it, right?
Right, get right, exactly. Communication, goals, integration, now that we have Anthony on board, as well as Joe, and integration of the team. Yeah.
And no facilitator, Paul.
Paul, you and I are going to do a trust fall.
Yeah, you go first.
Oh, awesome.
What could go wrong?
Okay, great. So we're all set on that?
Multi-purpose room?
Yes.
What is For that
everybody
motion,
okay with me picking up some? I can just grab some box of Joe or something like that, or
Sounds good.
coffee work.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, maybe I'll make some popovers or something.
Okay. So we have a motion?
Do we need one? I guess so. I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen meet for our discussed retreat at 9 a.m. At the multipurpose room on Saturday, January 16th.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. DeCoste,
Mr. DeCoste is aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
That was my dog, but yes.
Cindy Napoli is aye. So we are scheduled for a retreat on Saturday, the 16th at 9 a.m. at the multipurpose room. Great. Thank you. And so now we're on to agenda item number 8.
yes, Madam Chairman. Joe is going to take this one. This is the intermunicipal agreement on the regional CDBG grant that Joe has been working on so diligently with our neighboring communities.
I
Joe?
will say that Joe has been, even before Anthony got here, Joe was working diligently on this, and
Yes,
kudos to Joe. Thank you.
absolutely.
Well, thank you to Chuck and Anthony on that. Madam Chair, in the board's packet, I provided the board with a memo just sort of summarizing the work that's been done as part of the CDBG grant with the towns of Acton, Boxborough, Maynard, and Westford. So basically over the summer, and I know it seems like it's been a long time since we first discussed this, but over the summer was when we submitted the application, getting funding for $1.6 million to then spread upon those towns. We had to provide DHCD and the state with focus as far as what those grant funds were going to include. One of the things that we ended up doing over the last couple of months was further refining the scope of that project with the assistance of a consultant. Because we're using federal funds as part of the CDBG grant, there's some pretty stringent reporting that's needed. And as such, we're going to be using a grant administrator. Acton currently has a grant administrator RFP advertised currently and is anticipating basically finalizing this week, end of this week, to bring someone on board and then to assist. And within the material that gave you, not only is there the IMA with various towns, but there's also a PowerPoint that was put together with the consultant and Acton staff, identifying some of the projects that would be kicked off. One of them would be a direct assistance to micro businesses. Micro businesses are businesses with 5 or less employees. There are some income requirements that will have to be verified. That's some of the work that the grant administrator will assist in. Another component would be for families that are looking to, say, in order for a parent to keep their job, they need to have kids in childcare. Another component of this grant would be to direct pay for childcare expenses, daycare expenses that allow for a parent to work. And that would be paid directly to, say, a childcare facility or other type of school that then allows that parent to work. Again, there are some income requirements and reporting that would be needed that would be administered by the grant administrator. And then lastly, there's assistance for food pantries. That will be the third component of this grant. Right now, the timeline for sort of kicking things off is over the next couple of weeks so that things can essentially go live and we can start advertising and getting, helping some businesses in towns the beginning of February. And basically, we're just going to keep going until money runs out. There are some things such as the food pantry assistance that if after a couple months we basically haven't used them, we can reallocate, or maybe it might go to a town that may have additional food pantries if we've already sort of satisfied a need within town. But many of the food pantries that say serve Littleton also serve some of our neighboring towns as well. So that's basically nuts and bolts of the CDBG grant program. And the last step, all the towns are basically having their select boards approve the IMA this week and next week, so we can get this in place and start to process applications and get word on the street.
All right. Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Layton. And I know that you have been working on this for quite some time now. I appreciate the update. So I was reading through this, and so just to clarify, so the money that's coming in, it's getting divided equally between each municipality that's participating in this.
Correct. And it's going to start off that way. If all of a sudden we don't have any more businesses, then there may be some shifting of funds.
Okay.
Oh, and I should note that the assistance that would be provided for the micro businesses, it identifies that it's a grant, but as long as they maintain, as long as they're meeting the objectives of the grant, it's a forgivable grant. Forgivable loan. It's not specifically a grant because there are some performance measures that need to happen. There's applications that need to be done, and they do need to verify income and that they've lost revenue due to COVID. But when you look through the material, it talks about a loan program. And just wanted to clarify that it is a loan, but it's basically a forgivable loan. So essentially this would not have to be paid back as long as they meet the criteria within the program.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the board?
Great job, Joe.
This is super impressive, and I think it's incredibly relevant right now. I love it. I did have one question. I was reading through it, and one of the first paragraphs in the document about the grant itself, the Town of Acton document, it says that the HUD regulations are specific and the funds can't be used for rental or mortgage assistance. But then under the micro enterprise, it says that the funds can be used for rental assistance. Can you clarify that?
I can clarify that. I can get clarification.
Okay.
On that.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're not, I don't want HUD angry at me because I'm on the housing authority and they do a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Okay. But yeah, no, this is just, it's nothing but good. You know, like I think it's really important to support the towns and the residents right now. I know a lot of people are having a hard time, and this is exactly what they need. Childcare and rent, and, you know, let's keep the businesses open. So well done.
Is there any kind of outreach, Joe, that you think that any other communities are doing to try to make people aware of it and solicit?
Once we get the, that's a good question, because there will be a component. So one of the things that the 5 towns have talked about, we do have a draft press release that we'll send out, and materials. Once the grant administrator is on board, then we have a place to then refer questions and applications to. So we'll be going out. We've all talked about utilizing social media on our websites, having small little PSA for not only publication on social media, but then also on our LC. Exactly. And then also doing some direct reach out through utilizing our business database through the town clerk's office.
Mm-hmm. Utilizing the EDC and
exactly. Yep.
The LBA. Yeah. Good.
Yep.
This is awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
A motion, Madam Chair?
Motion, please.
Yeah. Move that the select board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the intermunicipal agreement for the regional CDBG CV grant program.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste?
Mr. DeCoste is aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written. Great work on that, Joe. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
And Next up,
Next up is actually Joe again. Joe dealing with the 40R project and the MAPC technical assistance that we're looking for.
Okay, so so one of the things, and there's been some emails that have come out this week, especially giving sort of a heads up to the board about a meeting on January 21st with the planning board. But wanted to give the board with more of a detailed update as far as the 40R project. As you know, we've over the summer we had completed the Littleton Station Village visioning plan. Within that plan, it identified recommendations for development of transit-oriented village around the commuter rail station. With the creation of the Littleton Station Area Committee, we have two members on the select board, Matthew and Chuck. I also have been assisting, as well as two members of the planning board, Anmar and Toolhill, to look at options for developing around the train station. The group had discussed various zoning tools to guide development, and it was recommended by the consultant to utilize 40R, Chapter 40R, which is the state's smart growth zoning enabling legislation. So within the memo that provided to the board, sort of a rundown just quickly as far as some of the meetings we had in the past, as well as a December 3rd presentation that the consultant, Dodson Flinker, had provided to the board that provides a summary as far as their role developing 40R design guidelines, what's sort of involved, and then also some images that assisted the committee in identifying sort of what we identified as a look and feel for development around the train station in Littleton. Tomorrow is going to be another meeting with the committee, and our meetings they're recorded. They're available on Zoom, so they are public meetings in case anyone wants to drop in. But we're going to be meeting with the consultant to go over draft bylaw as well as draft design guidelines. The hope then is that for December 21st, we can have more of a public informational meeting to present some of the regulations and design guidelines and identifies essentially what is looking to be accomplished out there. In meeting to work on preparing the 40R bylaw, we had some leftover funds that Dodson and Flinker had used to retain their services to do the design guidelines, but there's some additional work that was needed. And this specifically is around mapping and also the completion and preparation of the 40R preliminary district designation application. And Maren and I had met with members of MAPC staff to talk about ways we can get technical assistance. And through the district's local technical assistance program, MAPC is able to provide technical assistance directly to the town for doing that work. This is huge because we don't have designated GIS staff. We have Maren on staff, but we don't have a lot of bandwidth to do some of the analysis and mapping that's needed to support the application. So within the board's packet is also a rather straightforward letter requesting technical assistance. It does ask that the select board support the project, and that's why it's in front of everyone tonight, to get support for submitting that technical assistance application.
great. Thank you, Mr. Layden. So one of the things I do want to ask, you said the meetings I know that they're held during the day, but I could not find them on LCTV as being recorded.
No, they're not. They're via Zoom.
Correct. They're recorded by Zoom, and I'm just pulling up the website because And I know that we're recording it because that's how we're doing the meeting minutes.
Oh, I just couldn't find them. Because I've tried to search, especially that presentation that was held in December, and I couldn't find it.
So I had
But
some
maybe I was,
email on that. Do you think that we
Blinker.
can have LCTV just upload that to their YouTube channel?
Yeah, let me follow up on that because we have all of the, like I said, we record those so that we can do meeting minutes. And I may have just spoken out of turn without verifying first that they were then just put on our website, but I can check with that.
okay. I just think it would be helpful, especially an important project like this. I know it's convenient for everyone to have the meetings held during the day, but as far as trying to get
Caught up.
information out to the residents and being transparent, it's, majority of people are not going to tune in to the meeting during the day because they're working. So it might, if the meetings aren't going to continue to be held during the day as opposed to in the evening, it would be nice to have them available to watch on LCTV.
Yeah.
And so there's a meeting coming up on the 21st, correct, with the planning board?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the LSAC is meeting tomorrow as well.
Correct. Both are
Right.
correct. The committee's meeting tomorrow, and then that would be in preparation for a meeting on the 21st with the planning
Right,
board.
but I think the consultant's giving a presentation on the 21st, right?
Yes.
With the planning
Yes.
board? Okay, all right. All right, good. Well, thank you for this update, Joe. I appreciate it. Are there
For a
any
motion,
questions?
Madam Chair?
If there's no other questions or comments from members of the board, certainly, Mr. Glavy.
Okay.
Can I just say Joe's on fuego, and that he and Maren have both been working really hard on this. It's been awesome to see it come together.
Mhm.
I love it.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
All right, we're ready for a motion, Mr. Glavy.
All right. I'll move that the select board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the request for MAPC technical assistance in support of the Littleton Station Village 40R bylaw development process.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
Mr. Knox? We lose Joe? Mr. DeCoste?
Mr. DeCoste is aye.
Cindy Napoli is aye. I don't know, do we still have Mr.?
Joe's there.
Aye.
Okay, perfect. All right, great. Thank you. The motion is
Joe
approved.
hit his mute button.
Approved motion is approved as written. Next, we're on to item 8C. We have,
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So
Sure.
Mass Municipal Association is going on the 21st and 22nd. And I think in the past, the board is taking the opportunity to go and reap the benefits of that trade show. And unfortunately, this year it's remote. So right now, I think I'm the only one that's going from the town other than Joe. So normally in the case, the chair of the board would be able to go to the annual meeting and vote on anything that may come up. But because right now nobody's going, you'd just be delegating me to go to that meeting and vote on behalf of the town. And it's usually minor things like Meyer increases. Chuck, I think you went to it a couple of years ago, right? Or something.
Yes.
Yeah. A little bit uneventful, but since I'm going to be there, if you want to give me that delegation, happy to.
We're able to do that, Anthony. We're able to delegate you as a proxy.
Yeah, there's a form that you're authorizing tonight in the motion that I would just need Cindy to sign, and do that tomorrow, send it off to the MMA, and I'm your guy.
Okay. I know that we can
No
do it,
hospitality suites, tough gig.
I knew that we could do it amongst ourselves, but I didn't know that we could do it to the town administrator or other designate.
Well, I got a motion here that says we can, so
Fair enough.
ready
excellent.
for it? All right.
I'm
I'll
ready.
move that the select board vote to designate town administrator Anthony M. Insaldi Jr. as the official delegate to the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting.
Second.
And take good notes.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
DeCoste is aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written, and we are on to item 8D.
Final item, Madam Chair, is just cleanup from the licensing process. At the end of the start of the new year, the board needs to approve the ABCC's 2021 license renewal certificate form. So we're looking for that tonight, for the board to sign that.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
Give me a
We're
pen.
ready for motion?
Okay. Move that the select board vote to sign the 2021 Alcohol and Beverage Control Commission licensing renewal certification form to be sent to the ABCC.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Nordhaus,
Yes.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
DeCoste is aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written. And now we are on to meeting minutes from October 5th and December 21st, 2020. Any questions or comments on the minutes?
No.
Everyone's all set with them, then I will move that the select board vote to approve the regular session meeting minutes of October 5th, 2020 and December 21st, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Nordhaus,
Yes.
Mr. DeCoste,
DeCoste is aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
and Cindy Napoli is aye. The motions are approved as written.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Motion to
Second.
adjourn and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. DeCoste,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus,
Aye.
Cindy Napoli is aye. And that concludes our meeting for this evening. Good night, everybody. Thank
Good
you.
meeting and good night.